The light Spanish needle has, much like its sister pattern, the dark Spanish needle, a long history within the Yorkshire fly fishing and fly tying fraternity. To date, the pattern first appears in Jonathan Pickard's manuscript of 1820, where it is dressed with a body of orange silk, hackle of snipe undercovert, and head of peacock herl. This orange-bodied dressing becomes a standard within the Wharfdale fly fishing community. However, at some point in time, angler and fly dresser William Robinson amended the dressing to include a body of crimson silk. This alternative dressing is largely ignored by Wharfdale anglers and fly dressers, though conversely it finds its way into T.E. Pritt's Yorkshire Trout Flies, published in 1885. But even with Pritt's inclusion of the crimson-bodied version, it's still largely disregarded by his contemporaries. So much so that in their later seminal work Brook and River Trouting, Edmonds and Lee stick to Pickard's original dressing, though minus the peacock herl head. However, to demonstrate the dressing of the pattern, I'm going to follow William Robinson's example with his amended dressing. Now to dress this pattern, I'm using a size 14 Airex dry fly light hook. For the silk, I'm using a vintage spool of Purcell's number 13, which is crimson. And for the hackle, I'm using a snipe undercover. And for the distinctive herl head, I'm using a single strand of peacock herl. Now to start the fly, simply come in with your tying silk and take 2 or 3 nice firm turns of silk, trapping down that butt section of silk there. Once you're happy that the silk is trapped in, come in with your scissors and snip off the waist end. And now, in tight touching turns, bring that silk down the hook shank to a point somewhere between the point and the end of the barb. Obviously here I'm using a barbless hook, so it's pretty much the rack of the eye, and I'm quite happy with the length of that. So now again, in tight touching turns, we bring our silk back up the hook shank to a point where we're going to tie in our snipe hackle. Of course, you've got to remember to leave yourself enough distance not only for the hackle wraps, but also enough room to build up the head of the fly with your peacock herl. And now taking your snipe undercover hackle, we simply come in and brush back a few fibres of the hackle just to expose a little tip on the feather. Something like that. If it's a bit too large and unmanageable, you can always just trim down that tip a little bit more. You just really need enough to be able to trap it down with the silk. And now bring the hackle up to the hook shank and take 3 or 4 nice firm turns of silk, trapping it down. Come in with your scissors, trim off any of the waist end there of that tip. And now start to take your hackle wraps. If you've got any hackle fibres in the way, you can simply just start to brush them back between each turn. I'm going to take 3 turns of hackle here, so I like my flies to be more densely hackled. Now with tying silk, come in and trap down that hackle stalk with 2 really nice firm turns of silk. Once you're happy, come in with your scissors, cut the hackle stalk, and now start to trim off any stray ends of hackle fibres that you can see. And now we prepare our herl by simply trimming off the tip end a little bit, and again with 2 of 3 nice tight turns, trap it down onto the hook. Once you've got it trapped down, simply trim off any stray ends of peacock herl, and we come in with our secret weapon. Now this is hen's cintron thread, and it's normally a 2-ply thread, but I've stripped it down to a single strand, and this is roughly about 40 aught, so it's very, very fine. And now come in with the thread, trap down our original silk thread, and then once we've trapped it down, we come in with our scissors and we trim off the silk and any waste end of cintron thread. And now we take our peacock herl and our cintron thread and we just twist them together so it makes a nice rope. And now we start to wrap that in between the hackle and the eye of the hook. Once you're happy with the size and density of the head, come in with your cintron thread again and simply trap it down with 2 or 3 nice firm turns of thread. And you can see here, because it's such a fine thread, it's almost invisible. Now come with our whip finish tool and take a 3 or 4 turn whip finish right in front of the head of the fly. Give it a pull and then simply trim off with your scissors. Come in with your bodkin and now just tidy up those hackle fibres, and there you have Robinson's light Spanish needle.